Hello again, and welcome to Winning with the Wrangler at Dick Powell's Leadership Corner, brought to you by Earth, Wind, Fire, Water Training and Development, where our passion is building leaders of today and tomorrow. The information on today's program was gathered from many different places and many different people. If you hear yourself in our conversation today, it is not all about you. For speaking appearances or support, give us a call at 727-422-1833 or send me an email, dick@ewfw.org. Today's program is entitled Lost in the Land of AsSoonAs. Now, this title came to me many years ago actually, and I started writing it down, and the more I wrote it down and the more I shared it, the more popular it became. So let me share it with you today, because I want to see, really, if you see yourself inside these words. So I ask you the question, have you ever been lost? Daniel Boone, one of our great explorers in America, once said that he had never been lost. You know, when asked that question, Daniel, have you ever been lost? And he said, no, I have been confused for a couple days, but never lost. You know, that got me to thinking that if you had a plan and you were doing some work on it, sometimes you have to change your strategies to get to where you're going. Doesn't mean you always have to be lost. But I have to tell you that I was raised in a household that was stuck in the land of AsSoonAs. I mean, they were stuck so firmly that I was raised with that thought process. They were and still are stuck in that same place. Let me explain to you what the land of AsSoonAs is. And I'll bet you've said these words. As soon as I have the right job, as soon as I have enough money, as soon as I have the right house, as soon as you are old enough. And the list goes on and on. It was just crazy around our place. As soon as this, as soon as that, as soon as, and it was always wishing in one hand and hoping in the other. You know, but there was never any action taken. So they were always been lost. You see, they never even tried to get out. Are you lost in the land of AsSoonAs? Many years ago, I had the opportunity to go and hear Stephen Covey. He was given an opportunity for the day on 7 habits of highly effective people. They were such powerful lessons in personal change that very day, I changed my way of thinking. And I changed my life. Stephen changed my whole way of doing things that day. It was a start. He asked, who in the room has had a mentor or coach? It got very quiet around everywhere in that big room. He went on to say, hey, wait a minute. It could be someone that you've never met. It could be someone that you know personally. It could be someone that you only met in a book. You see, that day I realized all those people I was reading about and trying to put things into my life, they were my mentors also. And that person who lived down the road, who was much older than I was, who was always really trying to fill me with some wisdom, what a mentor. Just didn't realize it at the time. And I'll bet you don't either. I'll bet there's people in your life and books you have read and seminars you've gone to and things you've accomplished that you didn't realize came from a mentor or coach. In my life today, I have my own coach. Even though I'm a business coach for other people, I have one for myself. It's needed. Stephen next reached into his pocket and pulled out an old and battered Boy Scout compass. It was pretty amazing to me. I didn't realize that Mr. Covey had been in scouting all of his life and helped write some of the manuals, but there he was, standing up there with his old beat-up compass. He held it up for everyone to see, and I thought to myself, I wonder if that thing even still works. You see, I had one just like it out in my Jeep. He went on to ask, he said, how many of you know where your compass is pointing? I have to tell you that at that time I had almost no clue where my compass was pointing. You see, the compass is not unlike that mentor or coach, someone or someones that help you draw on the map where you want to go. He went on to ask, anyone know which way is north? Now, it was pretty amazing to me when he asked that, and I thought everybody knew which way north was. Where we were in that big auditorium, it was right behind me because it was over by the airport, and I knew the airport pointed north. Well, he had everybody stand up. He said, stand up. And boy, everybody in that crowd room did. And it was pretty amazing. There was a lot of people with high-ranking titles. He said, now I want you to close your eyes and point north. So, I followed along. I closed my eyes and I'm pointing north. He said, okay, now everybody open their eyes and see which way you're pointing and look around and watch everybody else. It seemed like the majority of people were pointing some way that was nowhere near north. He said, okay, sit down. And as we sit down, I think most people felt kind of silly. I felt kind of silly sitting next to some people because I was pointing north that day and nobody else at the table was. But he went on to talk about true north. He said true north, the compass needle always swings to true north, and that's true. This is where our values lie. What we stand for. What are non-negotiables? When he asked that question, what are non-negotiables, people started to cringe. I saw a lot of upper-level senior leadership people start to cringe. I kind of knew where I was and what I lived by, and my values, and what drove me. But when Stephen started asking the other questions, I have to tell you, I had to put some more time to it. You see, direction. Do you know where you want to go? What is your vision, that future picture? He said, can you describe it to me? Is it on a piece of paper? Can you show it to anyone else? Boy, I didn't have any of that things done. And I don't think anybody else in the room did. He said, I'm going to encourage you to begin with the end in mind. What's the end look like? Can you draw on a map? And will you be able to follow the marked trail? That's a pretty interesting question, wasn't it? You see, he was using the compass and the map to really talk about what are you willing to do to get to where you want to go, and where do you want to go? He was really talking about your vision, your future picture, and your mission, your purpose, your calling, and your strategy, your plan, your daily things you're going to do every single day so you can live your mission and achieve your vision. Mr. Covey that day, I have to tell you, changed my life. And I would encourage you to think about these things today. He went on to tell you, take and say, change. You know, that word that makes you cringe just a little bit. Change comes slowly, he said, either good or bad. To change your life, you have to change your mind. And change your mind, you must become a lifelong leader. And he followed it up with these words. The decision is yours. When I ran across these notes from those years ago, I was cleaning out some things, and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there was this wad of notes stuck into that book. And I started looking through them. And I realized I was working with a lot of people who misunderstood this thing called change. You see, change is the only thing that you can count on. Things change every single day. The weather, the time, the people, places, things, everything changes every day. Some fast, some slow, some good, some bad. And when he was talking about becoming a lifelong learner, what he meant. What are you reading? Books, magazines. Who are you hanging around? The people that you're associating with. Things you're involved with. And when he said the decision is yours, I made a decision. I hope you do too. He went on to say about action. He says you'll never get anywhere until you take the first step. You know, I think that was an old Confucius thing, but I think Mr. Covey was right on the nose. A pastor of mine, he said these things. He said you must get up, look up, and link up. All those things take action. Get up out of bed, get dressed, get going, show up. Look up. Know who and where you came from. And link up. You have to realize there's nothing in the world that you can do all by yourself. I love these hats I have, but you know there's no way in the world I could make one for myself. Have to wear glasses. I can't do that either. Shirts. Yeah, man, I like them. I can't make them either. Think about it. Who are you linking up with? You see, a lot of it is who you're hanging around, who you associate with. Get up, look up, link up. Think about it. Compass. Remember the compass. When you pull it out and look at it. We keep one here all the time. It's up there on top of my desk. We do that for a reason. When I look at that compass, I realize that I really need to have that mentor and coach in my life so that it keeps me on that correct path to get to where I have decided I wanted to go. You see, that's a choice. People tell me that I have no choice. And when I tell them that, when you say I have no choice, you've just made one. We all have choices in life, and the hard part is knowing which ones to do. And sometimes the terrible part is you learn the best choice by doing the wrong thing. But that's okay. You see, if you learn the word failure is the most positive thing you can do, and you learn failure is just a learning tool that you put to work, what you learned, different story. Now the direction, true north. What are your values? What do you live by? What's the code that you live by? What's your morals? What are your non-negotiables? Think about it. Don't cheat, steal, kill people. What are your non-negotiables? Vision. I loved it when I heard Mr. Covey say, begin with the end in mind. Because I could dream then of what I wanted to look like. I could dream about how I was going to be. But you see, a dream is only a dream unless you put some action to it. That's why you must have the mission and the strategy to go along. Don't get me wrong, I love dreams. I think they're just a fantastic thing, but I think if you don't put any action to them, they're just going to sit there and mold. Change. If you want to change your life, you have to change your mind. This is a hard one for most people. I have to tell you, when I started learning that and started doing that, I started changing because I was doing ongoing continual education. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be all formal education. Jim Rohn says formal education will make you a living. Personal individual education, educating yourself, will make you wealthy. Now, I don't know about that. It has done pretty good around here, and we're very thankful, and we've been very blessed to doing things that we do here at Earth, Wind, Fire, Water Training Development. Miss Robin and I have been blessed to be able to take and travel and be on stage and share with those around the country. It wasn't easy, I don't think. But let me take you back to a land of AsSoonAs. You see, there in a land of AsSoonAs is also one of the most deadly diseases in our country today. And that deadly disease can be caught by someone sitting next to you. It can be caught by someone speaking to you. It can be taught in a large auditorium. It can spread so fast that it's just amazing to me that one person down in the front can spread it to the person in the back in a matter of moments. That's how deadly this disease is in America today. This disease is called plum disease. And plum disease is stuck in the middle of a land of AsSoonAs. It keeps people stuck there. You see, plum disease is poor little old me. Yeah, you don't think about that. It's always somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's reasons. I can't do it because, but I can't do this because, AsSoonAs, you got more excuses than you can make. But this disease runs rampant. It keeps the poverty mentality stuck within the land of AsSoonAs. The plum disease and this poverty mentality, you see how these things all build on one another. Now, you understand why it's so important that I brought you this message today. This message of a land of AsSoonAs, poor little old me, and poverty mentality will keep you stuck. When Daniel Boone said, hey, I was confused for a while, but I was never lost. What he meant was he knew where he was going. He just maybe had to take a different path. So where are you going? What's it look like? Can you explain to someone else? Is it written down? Do you have some steps, some strategy in order to make it happen? Do you have a coach or a mentor to come alongside you and help guide you? It's a different way of thinking of things, isn't it? That day, many years ago, when I went to see The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People with Stephen Covey, I remember sitting in that big group, and there was people at every one of those tables who were from different organizations. And I was there by myself. You see, I'd gone to my upper level leadership and I said, hey, this is an opportunity. We can take everybody for a certain price, or it costs a whole lot more if you go individually. And he said to me, Dick, well, here at this company, leadership is what I tell you it is. And I said, excuse me? He says, I'm not giving you any time, and I'm not giving you any money, and we're not doing that. I said, well, can I have a day of vacation? He says, you can take a vacation. So I did something that day that I haven't done in over 30 years, by the way. I made a phone call. I put it on my charge card, all $510 of it. And then I did the stupid thing. I did that stupidly because I then went home and told Miss Robin what I'd done. You see, we had 2 little kids at the house, and there was just really wasn't in the plan to take and put that on the charge card. We really didn't have that kind of money. Back then, we were just doing good to do good. Well, thankfully, she didn't throw me out of the house, and she didn't get rid of me. And I went to that conference that day, drove my old battered, beat-up Jeep and parked it in the garage of that hotel. Went up and checked in and realized I was going to be the only person there that hadn't gone with a group of leaders from their organization. Now, when you go to these things, normally, if you pay that extra money, you get the books and you get to sit closer to the speaker and those kind of things. And I had just barely been able, I'd only bought the cheapest package I could get into, which meant I had a place at the table. No lunch, no books, and I was at the back. But that was okay with me. You see, I'd read the book, but I sure didn't understand the learning. As I was sitting back there, and Stephen, got about the end of the organizational piece, he sent us all out to lunch, and those who had paid stayed there and ate that big lunch. I jumped out the back door and ran up to my Jeep and ate my peanut butter and jelly sandwich and drank my water. Went back down, and only to discover that table that I was sitting at by myself had been removed. I didn't think anybody was coming back there. So I stood up at the back of the room with my notepad, taking as many notes as I could as Mr. Covey's talked. And that's when he made an announcement. He made a point, and it was very embarrassing for the day, but I'll share it with you, Dale. He said, I want all of you, how many of you came here with your group from your company? Raise your hand. And of course, there was a lot of hands raised. And he said, how many of you did your company pay for you? Boy, all those hands were up. He said, now I want to ask, who came here today on your own dollar? Boy, there were no hands other than this old cowboy who was at the back of the room standing. I was pretty embarrassed to raise my hand, but I did. And then he asked the question, he recognized me, and then he asked the question, how many of you had to give up a day pay to come here today? Again, that old cowboy was at the back. He was the only one there. And he said, it amazes me the number of people here that have come. How many of you have actually read the book before you got here? Well, there were a few more hands then. Mr. Covey went on to say a next thing that kind of embarrassed me to the most. We were almost at the end of the day. And I don't know if you've ever been to one of these conferences, but usually that table sits right up front by the speaker. It usually has all their books and papers, and it was where the people have paid that big money to take and be there and have lunch with and all that kind of things. And there was an empty chair up there. I'd been standing up for about an hour and a half, almost 2. And Mr. Covey said, young man in the back. Yes, I had dark beard back then. He said, come on up here and sit down. I'm going to finish up for the day. I was embarrassed, but I went. And I sat there and I looked up and I watched. Mr. Covey said, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do for a living? How do you want to do it? And he looked right at me. He said, what do you want to do? I think I shocked him a little bit because I told him, I said, I want your job. He smiled and he said, usually nobody has the courage to say that to me here in public. But at the end of the day, he came off stage as everybody was leaving and they were packing up. There was a stack of books on that table. A lot of information that I surely could never afford to purchase, especially at that time in my life. And he said to me, he said, hey, you're sitting here, those are yours. I said, I can't afford to pay for those. He said, I didn't ask you to pay for them. He says, whoever that yahoo was that didn't show up to sit in that chair paid for them. Take them home. You see, that was a start of a new life for me. But it wasn't easy. I went home, told my wife, I said, I'm going to be a professional speaker. I'm going to be on stage like Stephen Covey. And she said, that's good, Dick. Tomorrow you need to go back to work. We need the money. And by that way, that day of vacation you gave up, we're going to have to figure out how to make that work. And she said, and also you have to work some more overtime because we got to pay that bill. Didn't matter to me at least. I worked a lot of overtime. I did whatever is necessary to make that all happen. To get to where I am today and to be able to share with you is just the most important piece in my life. Realizing at an early age that I did not have to live in the land of AsSoonAs, that I did not have to live by the plum disease, that I did not have to have a mentality of poverty, that the American dream was live and well. I just had to get up off my dead you-know-what and make it work. And so when that pastor looked at me and said, Dick, you got to get up, look up, link up, I understood what he meant. Well, I hope you really enjoyed this piece of today's learning. I'm going to take us into a next little piece here because I believe it's just that important. This land of AsSoonAs leads us always to some must-haves for every leader. Now, what would those must-haves be? Well, those must-haves, the ability to speak. When I first started speaking on stage, I talked like this, and it was a lot of fun. And a young man said, or actually an older fellow said, you're going to have to change your speak. You're going to have to learn how to speak clearly and enunciate. So I'm going to tell you, if you want to be listened to, you have to speak clearly and enunciate. All you sports people who get on the TV, I'm going to encourage you, learn how to speak clearly and enunciate. To be a great leader, you need to learn how to listen. And listen with intentionality. Not listen just to give an answer, but listen with intentionality. You need to learn the ability to mentor. When it's needed, how it's used. Ask questions. Don't give answers. You need the ability to learn how to negotiate. You see, the win-win is really a fallacy. But win-lose is worse. Learning how to negotiate things means, how do I work together with someone? How do I build a relationship? You need to learn how the ability to motivate people. And what motivates individuals? Because we're all different. My boss, when I worked for him, I told him one day, I said, you know, the money's good, but I just soon you buy me a cup of coffee now and then, tell me you're doing a good job. That's what motivated me, but maybe not someone sitting next to me. Great leaders learn how to discern and make decisions quickly. Learning how to discern things means that I need to prepare myself and stay on top of everything that's going on around me and constantly learning so I can make those decisions. Great leaders learn how to plan, not just on a long-term basis. I've got a 5-year plan. They need to learn how to do it on a daily, weekly, monthly opportunity. And they need to show people what they're doing because people do what people see and people respond to how people do things. You don't do it, they won't either. Leaders need to learn to be adaptable. Different situations call for different opportunities. Learn how to be adaptable. Learn how to do it consistently. Leaders need the ability to be able to define roles and responsibilities. Who's responsible for what, who they report to, and how does it need to be done? Great leaders learn how to break down barriers by building relationships by even people they don't like. You know what? Doesn't hurt. And great leaders need to learn how to recognize and address tension inside their team or their workplace. And that one, I'm going to encourage you to learn how to do very well. Now, on behalf of myself, Dick Powell, and the whole Leadership Corner team, I want to say thank you for being a part of today's program. Our hope is that you have received a nugget of wisdom and guidance that will help you build your leadership ability. Now, if you have any questions or comments on today's program, hey, don't hesitate. Give me a phone call, 727-422-1833, 727-422-1833. You know what? Send me an email, dick@ewfw.org, dick@ewfw.org. Go to the website, www.ewfw.org. And when you know for a fact that you're ready to have the Wrangler come and do a keynote speech or teach some leadership and accountability to your opportunity and program, all you got to do is just give us that call, send us that email, and that's it. But until next time, DW the Wrangler saying, ride hard, ride fast.